Hi, thanks. I'm so excited to be here this morning to help moderate this conversation with these two fantastic former members of Congress who are still very engaged in education and workforce development issues. So welcome. It's nice to have you here. As Ron mentioned, I worked on the Hill for over 20 years. In fact, my work experience far exceeds 25 years, unfortunately. I'm kind of old. But I worked for the Education and Workforce Committee for 15 of those years. And so I had the privilege of working with both Congressman Miller and Congressman McKeon, and I had the privilege of working for Congressman McKeon when he was the subcommittee chair of the Higher Ed and Workforce Development Subcommittee, and as you all remember, and Ron mentioned, he shepherded through the Workforce Investment Act of 1998. And then both, that's right. And both of the chairs have been long supporters of workforce development as well as education policy in this country. So I have such deep respect for them. I think both of them represent the best in public service. Both were wise chairs, and they were fair and worked on a bipartisan basis and shepherded through not only the workforce development legislation, but higher education legislation, career and technical education legislation. And so it's an honor to sit up here with both of them. So we're going to get started. I'm going to start right away, and I will throw this question out to both of you. And I don't know who wants to go first, but it was great. It was great to hear the two congressmen this morning talk about the potential for bipartisanship. But, you know, we've been hearing a lot more division. Things seem a little bit more strident than they've been in recent years. And I know a lot of people are concerned about that. They're worried about support and funding for workforce development and education programs. So from your experience, both of you working on a bipartisan basis, do you think Congress and the administration will be able to work on a bipartisan basis on important legislation? And do you have recommendations for them? So I don't know who wants to take it first.
What the hell? Yeah, I think eventually you'll get back to there. This has been, obviously a very unusual election cycle, much surprise for the whole nation. I don't care how sophisticated you thought you were in the election process. Everybody was surprised at the outcome and much of what's happened since then. You have a person with little or no political experience, assuming the highest office in the United States. There's a lot to learn. There's an old phrase in Washington politics that the president proposes and the Congress disposes. And I think that's the way it sort of works. But to make that work, you have to spend a lot of time talking to people that you might not agree with, that you might not vote with. But the fact is, Buck was my chairman. He was a senior Democrat when I was chair. And you just have to get along and figure it out. And there's some things you can't work on, but that doesn't mean you take a battle axe to one another. It means you say, what's next? We have these obligations. They're running out. The authorizations for little, and you work your way through it. I mean, when I think of my most exciting bills that I worked on, and bills that I think are major changes in American society, they were all done with Republican partnerships. And those of you from California know how hard we fight over water between the North and the South and all of the rest of that. And to think that George Bush's father signed my water reform legislation, and when he was a Republican president of the United States, could have knocked me over. I thought when they sent that bill to the White House, I was dead. But it didn't work that way. I had a chance to go down and explain to him what I was trying to do. And I think that's what we had in common when we worked together. And I think this Congress will get there. But right now, and I think a real lesson was that there is, in every profession, in every occupation, every sports team, there's a rhythm, and you got to find it. And this president's got to find it with the Congress, and the Congress has got to find it with themselves. There's a lot of pent-up anger, there's a lot of pent-up disappointment, but the time has come to figure out who you're going to work with, what can you get done. It's not that you're going to get everything done, and I think maybe we were fortunate that such a graphic example took place of not working it out ahead of time, not figuring out the interest of the Congress, the interest of the president, the interest of the country, not figuring out ahead of time before you do something like trying to dramatically change the healthcare system. So we'll see. Buck?
You know, we were just talking back there. I had forgotten that George was born in Congress and spent 40 years there. I thought I was there a long time, and it was 22. So I've learned a lot from George over the years, and we probably philosophically are really at opposite ends. If we sat down and started ticking off all the things that we disagree on, we could probably come up with more than we agree on. But I really respected George and enjoyed working with him. Sometimes not so much, but generally he's
What is
right.
this, true confessions?
He really was a legislator, and he really, when you get down to the final nitty-gritty of give and take and trying to get something done, he fought very, very hard for his positions, but he also never destroyed personal relationships so that you couldn't go back and talk and go back and keep working on it. Ted Kennedy was that way. He told me once I was his most favorite Republican. I said, please, keep that inside this room. I was just new and I wanted to have some kind of career. But, you know, really, when George talks about rhythm, you know, we're right down to the Final Four now, and I'm pulling hard for Gonzaga. Because I went to BYU, and we can't beat Gonzaga, but this year we did. That's right. And I hope Gonzaga wins it all, and it'll be something that BYU can always hang their hat on. But it goes back to what you just said. I told my son a few days ago, I said it was really good for Gonzaga to lose to BYU when they did, because that toughened them up. And when I saw them play West Virginia and how tough that West Virginia, I've never seen a team do a full court press for the whole game, maybe the last minute, but they were very tough, and Gonzaga pulled it out. I don't think they'd have done that if they hadn't lost a game along the way, because pretty hard to go undefeated. So out of the chute, we lost, Republicans lost on a major issue. And I hope that teaches them lots of lessons, and they go back and try to establish some relationships to work together. I remember when President Bush was elected, and then finally everybody decided he was elected. And he called a meeting when he was still president-elect down at the governor's mansion in Texas. And I thought it was a mistake. I thought, no, we should get all the Republicans together. But no, he brought the Democrats. He had George sitting right next to him. And that, I think, was very, very important, because he wanted to be the education president. And, you know, he ended up having to be the war president. And it was kind of ironic that he was in a classroom when he heard the news, because the job that George, John, the president together, and Kennedy and Enzi, I think it was Enzi then. Judd Gregg did a phenomenal job of trying to really do some great things in education. Got flipped upside down with the way it was accepted, but I think the way they worked together on it was phenomenal. And that's what we need. Our country, I was giving a talk to somebody the other day, and I was talking about the situation around the world, because I also chaired the Armed Services Committee, and I've been to all these hot spots around the world, and I see how bad and how tough it is. But unless we learn to work together, then the only way that we can ever have a real problem is from within. And we need to learn to work together to solve our difficult problems before we can really handle all of the problems we have around the world. So I commend you for what you do. You're out on the front lines. You're trying to help people get jobs, which is one of the best ways to solve our problems. So look forward to being here. Talk too much.
No, not at all. That's great. As you know, the Trump skinny budget came out 2 weeks ago. And I think people are very concerned, particularly in this room, because the proposed budget for the Department of Labor was received, or at least was proposed to receive, 21% cut. And they specifically said that they were going to be recommending decreases in federal support for job training and employment services, particularly the formula grant programs, which these folks receive. Do you think that Congress will go along with cuts of that magnitude in workforce development at this time when everyone recognizes the need for skills training in this country and how important it is?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know that they'll replace all that money, but I don't think so. I really would have to tell all of you in this room, it's up to you. It's the reaction that members of Congress are going to see. Members of Congress traditionally have been very favorable and very involved in the idea of creating jobs, and whether it was WEOA, and all the iterations that we've gone through, because it's about their community. It's about people in their community. It's about businesses in their community. And I've never seen people organize like they're organizing right now. Now, I live in California. I live in the Bay Area. We do that a lot, but this is beyond and across generations like I've never seen before, from the youngest techies to people who are retired out of the professions who are joining together, concerned about what's taking place. And I think it's a remarkable opportunity. And certainly this organization, because you're really about good news. You're about your successes. And I would tell every one of you, you're not going to get the whole 21% back in the budget, but you can't live with what they have in the budget now. You can't live with losing 2 million clients that you won't be able to serve. It's not that they go away and they do something else with their life. They're in need, and you can't help them, and the community can't help them. And that spills over into the community colleges. That spills over into into apprenticeships. That spills over to the other community. So you got to go, and I have a very strong belief, and sometimes I just hit myself on the side of the head because I believed it's so strong and it was such a pain in the ass to put up with. But your constituents have a right to talk to you, whether it's in the Safeway store, whether it's in the park, or whether it's in your office. And I always believe you should just become a pain in the ass, a very polite pain in the ass, when you say, I want to have a meeting with you, and I want to bring my coworkers, and I want to bring some of the people that we've trained that are working in this community, and I want to bring you some families that were able to, to buy a house because they got retrained, they got a job. That's my job as a member of Congress. And people think that's not the case. And people, I learned it from some of my constituents. I say, well, I'm busy on Wednesday. So what are you doing on Thursday? So I'm busy on Thursday. So I'm busy on Friday. Well, I'm busy on Tuesday. And finally the guy says, well, tell me when you're not busy. Screwed me, right? Okay, so December 25th, I'm not busy. But it's really important. And I think I think what you saw happen on healthcare is because 24 million people got a message. I just got health care for the first time in my family or first time in my life, and now someone's going to take it away from me. And they went to town hall meetings and said, what about this? And there was no vote taken. There was no vote taken. That's an extreme example on a highly relative. On this one, it's about your community. WEOA has put energy into this whole operation, what you've been involved in for years, because there's a sense of now you can do deals with other partners and parties and that. We see the explosion and the quick acceptance of credentials and certificates. We see pathway projects that are designed. You don't have to take the whole AA program. You don't have to take the whole BA program. You don't have to get a master's degree. You can take this in steps. And for a lot of students, that's a big victory in terms of how they're going to go through the system. Yes, you can get a credential, go to work, and come back and figure out what you need next if you want to advance in that occupation or in that job placement, what you have. So this is a pretty exciting time for the workforce community. Most technical regulations I've ever seen in my life. I've tried 3 times to read them from stop to start, but never. Anyway, I'll read the finals. So I just think you've got to grab this opportunity. You got to grab this opportunity to lobby on behalf of that, because that cut is devastating. I don't think it will survive its whole, because, you know, Patty Murray and Lamar Alexander were very involved in this legislation. They worked it very hard to get it right, to get it bipartisan, to get it out there in the community. So that answer is, as I say, is in this room, and bring your successes and don't take no for an answer. And my predecessor will be happy to see you on Saturday morning.
I think George laid your mission out very succinctly and did a very good job, and I think you ought to follow that counsel. I frankly don't know what all the excitement's about, because in the 22 years I was in Congress, we never paid any attention to the president's budget. You know, it really didn't matter which party they were in when they sent it up, because it was always going to be changed. And one of the things that really bothers me the most now, you know, I talked about this when I was still in Congress, my last few years, when I finally got the message, but it hasn't changed. All of these fights are over the things that Congress gets to vote on. And if we totally eliminated the discretionary budget, totally, no workforce money, no education money, no defense money, just kept one building open to send out the Social Security Medicare checks, we would cut our deficit to about $500 billion. So until they develop the courage to really address the real major problems, the runaway entitlement program, we're bankrupt. So that's all of these fights, all of the bloodletting don't really amount to a whole lot. So having said that, I cleared the air, because they're not going to do that. So what you really need to do is what George said. Stand up for what you're fighting for, and go talk to your congressman. I would suggest you do it in a respectful way.
Absolutely.
I think that's very important. I see all these fights and things breaking out. That is not productive. I never had, I remember once sitting in my office and the staff would come in and say, there's a group out there and they've caused us a lot of problems. I said, I'll go talk to them. I went out, talked to them, and we had a great visit. I said, you can come in the office, but you can't all come in because we don't have enough room. We can stand here and talk, or you can send representatives in and we'll go talk. We ended up standing there and talking. Great visit. You know, if people will just talk to each other, you find out, try to find things that you agree on, because I think you'll find most congressmen will agree with you, and some of them sincerely. No, they do agree when it's one-on-one, you know. But really they do. They do support. They want to put people back to work, and you're the ones that are out there fighting to do it. So you just gotta get them in a place where you can talk to them, do it, and I think, as George said, don't take no for an answer, because this is something they want. This is something that we work bipartisan on the committee on, and it would be one, if they had started with this, they probably could have gotten something done.
You know, let me ask you a little tougher. This is a little more subjective of a question. You know, as you mentioned, there's some fantastic things, career pathways, sector initiatives, other things that will really take the workforce system to the next level. And a lot of the people in the room, probably most people in the room, are already doing a lot of those things. So there was a lot of support for WIOA. Everybody recognizes that education and job training and skills development is absolutely essential to our competitiveness as a nation and to economic prosperity for our citizens. So why is it so difficult when it comes to funding to get strong support for workforce development? It just has always been an uphill challenge. I think we've seen cuts for years. And I know that's a little bit tougher of a question, but is there any insight that you can provide, and are there any recommendations you can make for what to do about it?
Well, you know, it's what's important and what's urgent and what's interesting are all sort of different. But you know, I always think that the workforce argument has been a complex and difficult one to make in communities. I don't think a lot of people understand it in our communities unless they need it within their family or themselves personally or what have you. And but I think that now, with the broader participation that we're securing through WIOA, that we have a sort of an opportunity to reintroduce it to our communities. And I see the work that our company is doing and our Ed2Go projects now in job training, skills acquisition is really quite remarkable. And to see the support that it's now getting in the communities. Some of you may have heard of the presentation of the online high school. I see this in my community. It's remarkable what's happening. People who are stepping up. Libraries in the state of California, the governor matched every dollar libraries can raise in the community for one of these online high school that gives you a certificate and then gives you an accredited degree and a certificate in hospitality or security or healthcare and these other areas at the same time. I went to our Chamber of Commerce and I said, I'll put up $1,000. You have to match it. And that means that we're going to get 2 scholarships from our local library in the town that's not wealthy by any means. And people from the Kiwanis Club, the Rotary Club stepped up, our local bank stepped up, Chevron stepped up and said, fine, we'll participate in this. We want to see these people succeed. And a whole new constituency came to the idea of skills training. And they wanted to know what these students were going to be able to do. And then when the program was over, what were they going to get? They were going to get a real high school diploma, not an equivalency, not a facsimile, not a copy of, but a real high school diploma with all their credentials and a credential to go to work at an entry-level certified occupation. The enthusiasm is unbelievable. Those are now your people in a sense of understanding what's trying to take place. And maybe it didn't work when you invited them to come to this center and see this or something, but now when they go to the local library in the small communities, I'm talking about in Utah, in Idaho, in Southern California, in rural Northern California, libraries that have been doing 5, 10 of this. This is changing people's minds about the skills that people need and the change it can mean in their lives. I mean, that's what you do. You change lives. We talk about it in Congress a lot of times, and we do a lot of it, but we do it in large numbers that are sort of not comprehensible in a way. You do it in people's communities. They've got to become part of your advocacy groups, to your state senators, to your members of Congress. You know, we're running in California with whether this program is going to be allowed to continue or not. Well, we're going to put together a coalition. We're going to visit the governor. We're going to visit the state offices, and we're going to tell them what has been accomplished here. And that's going to be true now for the workforce boards. And I think that's the challenge. You're in the moment. We're in the moment. Yes, a lot of things have gotten better in this economy, but a lot of things haven't gotten better for a lot of people yet. And they've got to still be merged into this economy at the level in which they can participate and start to build their skills. And that's a story that has to be told locally. And so I think it's not just you go to your members of Congress. You got to go to service clubs. And a lot of you do this. I'm telling you how to do your job, right? Well, you're always telling me quietly in the lunchroom how to do my job. So and what I can do with my job. Okay, so I hear you. So I think it's a very kind of exciting moment, but there's a lot of risk in that budget. There's a lot of risk in showing the community that this is the next iteration of skills development, and it's sweeping the country. I mean, from graduate institutions all the way to online schools. I mean, it's just there. Don't miss the moment.
I am so happy to hear that. You know, education is the stepladder that gets you on the way to really reach the American dream, and everybody does it in a different way. Our whole education system starts out kindergarten, and it's on a track to send you to college, and not everybody wants to go to college, and so we put them on that track, and I really think that's what causes a lot of our dropouts, and I remember getting beat up when we first did the WIA. I got attacked from the right, and I was accused of doing all kinds of things, that we were going to take kids at the 9th, 10th grade. I talked to Phyllis Schlafly, and I didn't know who she was, and she called and wanted to straighten me out, and Chairman Goodling said, don't even talk to her. And I said, if we don't talk, So I talked to her once, and then I talked to her twice, and then she said, well, ultimately, if you pass this, it will make things better, and then it'll be harder to get rid of the whole education department. I said, excuse me, I did not come here to not try to make things better, and that was the last time we spoke. But I think if we would give people a chance, I was accused that we were going to do the German system. We were going to put people on, and I didn't know anybody from Germany. But when I met someone, I asked him about it. I says, how do you do this? He said, well, in the 10th grade, there's a decision made, and some kids go into, what is it when you're?
Apprenticeship.
Apprenticeship.
Yeah. In school.
And he said, I didn't even know the word. And some go on to university. And I said, well, who makes that choice? And he said, the mother. And I thought, who loves that child more? Who knows that child more than the mother? And why not? When I can remember, when I was a kid, big thing was get a car and then get a girlfriend, or get a girlfriend and get a car. It was, but then you had to learn how to fix that car, and then you married the girl, you started a family, you became a mechanic, you provide a good middle class income. Those days are gone. You can't do that anymore. You have to be a certified, we don't have mechanics, they're auto technicians and different things, but you have to go to school to learn that. But they have special schools for that. It's not at the university. It might be at the community college. It might be at a trade school. But we get these traditional schools fighting against the trade schools or the online schools. We don't need to be fighting each other. Our competition should be China, Russia, other places around the world. We should work to get all of the opportunities available, and just make all those paths available. There's enough. It ultimately, I guess, comes down to fights over money.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate, because I used to have a little pad on my desk, and it had 10 years before, the largest university was Minnesota, 50,000 students. 10 years later, and not one proprietary school in there. 10 years later, 5 of those largest schools were proprietary. And they provided over 1 million students that they were serving. Well, Minnesota was still the same size, 50,000. We didn't have the money to build bricks and mortar. We ought to be creative and do these other things, give everybody the things give them the opportunity to do what they want to do. And I think we would be much more successful in creating jobs and helping people to achieve what they want on the American dream.
So we're almost out of time, and I just wanted to, in our pre-call before we were getting ready for this panel, we had a discussion about reassuring people. that both of you, I think, and you've done that to a large degree, I think, through this conversation, but do you want to say one last thing about reassuring everybody that the world isn't going to end tomorrow and that, that, you know, or at least we hope not.
Sun will come up tomorrow.
No, you know, my father was a very, very powerful politician in California in the state Senate. And I used to, when I was a young man, I used to ask him about what's politics? And he always used to say to me, politics is just life. Who gets the car on Friday night? Who has to take out the garbage? Who does the dishes? It's all politics. Your sister is really nice to me. It's because she's going to ask me that she wants the car and to go to the show on Friday night, and you do the dishes. What have you been doing all week? Who have you talked to? How have you treated your mother? And that's politics. It's life. And I think you know, when you look, you can look at the budget and you can say, oh Jesus, this is what they think of us. You know, we got more demand than ever, and from a broader cross section of American society, and they're cutting our budget. Or you can say, let's go get them. And I think it's life that comes. And you know, unfortunately, we have a system where I defy members of Congress to tell their constituents no, they can't meet with them. I had a group of students at El Sobrante High School and De Anza High School, and they couldn't get anybody to pay attention to them. The toilets were broken, the glass was broken, a lot of minority students there couldn't do it. I said, they won't talk to you. They won't talk to you, really? They won't talk to you, no. And I said, when you go home from this visit to my office, they were in Washington, I said, make an appointment to go and invite KTVU Channel 2 to come out and see your school. They had more people on campus the next weekend trying to volunteer to help them do all of this, and eventually they rebuilt the entire school. They actually tore it down and started over. And those kids, I've seen them, and now they're adults, you know, they got family and this and all the rest of that. And they said, no, we can't do that. I said, no, yeah, just call up Channel 2. I said, they're always looking for a story. You'll hear from the school board. You'll hear from them. And they did. And that's what it's about. I understand it can be daunting. Member of Congress, United States Senator, yada, yada, yada. Put your shoes on one foot at a time. And you have a right to have that conversation and to show them what you're doing, the impacts you're having on the community, and the differences you have made. And that's a dollar well spent. That's what you can tell them. This is a dollar well spent. And it's going to get even better now because of the new partners that we have and the new programs that we have. We're going to take that dollar further down the road than we have in the past. And that's the opportunity here. It's not gray outside. It's sunshine.
I think George just nailed it. I don't know what politics is. My dad was a meat cutter, and I grew up becoming a meat cutter, and I've done a lot of different
things. That's like politics. I've seen him in action. I wish I'd known earlier he was a meat cutter. I'd have stood further back.
You know, life, I have been so blessed in my life, different things that I've done. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he said, man, I'm just too old to start a business. I said, how old are you? And he's 54. And I said, that's how old I was when I came to Congress. And now I'm on my third career. And I don't know what my fourth career is going to be, but we live in a fantastic, I use that word incorrectly, I found out. We live in a wonderful country. And do we have problems? You bet. But if we don't fix those problems, it's all on us. I have found that generally people that don't agree with you don't know what you're doing. If you get a chance to explain what you're doing, like George says, you take a dollar, you magnify that. That resonates with people. And if you put somebody to work, they are then able to go to a restaurant, or they're able to buy a home, or they're able to do something that benefits all of us. And so I think if you just do, as George said, get an appointment with your congressman, or if he won't make an appointment, just show up. And if you can set the tone where you can have a few minutes to tell them what you do. It's generally lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. People haven't been where you've been, and you have to show them, and you'll win them over. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And thanks to both of you. It was wonderful. Good to see you.
Thank you.